Welcome to the Cool Fireman Podcast, a virtual firehouse kitchen table with Matt, Adam, Brian, Doug, and Freddy, where they discuss everything that matters in today's fire service. Now let's get to the show.
This is our call to action right now. Are you listening?
Okay.
Are you on a tech
Everybody
team?
that's listening, call to action. We want somebody from the Urban Search and Rescue anywhere in the nation.
Oh my God. It sounds like
What?
Hubert.
What?
Y'all talking just sounded like Hubert. I was supposed to be my internet.
I don't know what to tell you.
Elon Musk is sending it to North Carolina. Sorry.
Oh, damn.
You'll get it.
All right. So we've got another. You guys are just a ball of energy today.
I know.
Well,
Everybody's
They're,
got
they're
ball.
both sick. I'm in pain.
yes.
sick.
This whole
Looks like
side
you
of my
went-
face is in
Brian
pain.
went 10 rounds with Mike Tyson earlier today.
Oh my God. I feel like it. It's this fall.
And my 250-pound fat ass fell off the back of a mule.
And Freddy's broke after going to go pick up meds for his kids.
Mookie just hit a home run.
Oh my
Oh,
God.
I'm way behind you.
Oh my gosh.
So
God,
don't
I
get
just
Doug
got strike
distracted.
one.
Matt,
Oh,
do
strike
not
two.
get Doug distracted. That's what happens.
I can't not, dude. We're sitting here. We're going to talk about Urban Search and Rescue. The four of us aren't on.
That's
the
ball
team.
4.
I've never been.
See what I
deployed to a
tell you? You
hurricane.
got him distracted right there.
That was ball 4, dude. Wow. Anyway, we're late. Okay, hey, so welcome in to episode, I don't know, 77, 8. What are we at, guys?
We're up there. It's still in season 1, mind you. We're still season 1.
Wait,
Wait,
so
what
I
is
changed it to
What?
season 2. Asshole.
you did?
Last time you listened.
When did
don't
that
know.
happen?
We never launched season 2. We never had a welcome to season 2.
We launched it when we got the Riverside app.
Oh,
Okay. Well,
Oh,
season
okay.
2, episode
77.
8. I don't know. Whatever.
9. Where's the
No,
clip?
it's still episode 78, but it's season 2.
Right. Well,
I'm
then you
glad we're
start
all on the same
over.
page.
Have
No,
you
we're
ever
not
have you ever tried to stream something? It was season 2, episode 94. No, dummy. It was season 2, episode 1.
And look at Freddy. Go to your Spotify app and check out Freddy. He's trying to figure out, where am I?
Somebody's
What's
crying
happening?
upstairs, I'm sure.
Oh,
Look.
God.
I'm looking at it. Promotion was
Jeez.
76.
So
Dude, the
He's-
season doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter. Like, who
look,
cares?
this is a shit show tonight. Freddie's sick.
I'm not sick.
Everybody in Freddie's house is sick.
Oh,
Brian is sick.
yeah.
I'm
my house is
lame.
sick.
I fell off my goddamn mule Monday night. 5.5 foot, my 250-pound ass landed on my back left hip bone. And
me.
thank God I went to the doctor today, 2 days later, and finally there's nothing broken or cracked. Thank God. It's just a strain and muscle spasms and all that. So I got some Flexeril and a Toradol shot and some lidocaine patches and told to stay home from work for a couple of days.
And let me say this. I texted Adam and he's MIA. He hasn't responded. So I don't even know if he's alive right now. Okay. Let me just say that.
Boss, I know I'm recording. I know I'm on sick leave today. You know why I'm on sick leave. Sitting still don't bother me. Any kind of twisting, not a good look. I almost cried when I sneezed. Remember I broke my ribs a couple years ago? The first time I sneezed and couldn't hold it in, I had a couple of tears came out. Well, today, on the way to the doctor, I sneezed twice and I almost cried. So,
Oh, me.
yeah. So pray to God that gets better. But anyway, today we're going to talk about considering the current climate's a good word, of the leftover remnants from Hurricane Helene and now Milton slamming Florida. We're going to talk about some USAR stuff. And this can go so deep. I mean, obviously none of us are on a tech rescue team. But they're already there's a ton of resources committed to North Carolina still. And now you've got not even a week, 2 weeks later, another massive storm taking place in essentially the same region that, I mean, you're taxing resources at this point. I know we sent guys down to Southwest Virginia during the flooding, and I don't know if they went to North Carolina, but we have 3 of our Swift Water guys, our Virginia Heart team, the helicopter aquatic rescue team. They work with the National Guard and come down in the helicopters for picking. We've got 3 guys that were staging on the Panhandle until it hit. So I'm sure they're working right now, but we just thought it was a good time to talk about some urban search and rescue stuff and what little bit we know about it. We want to get some of your input and some of you guys that are much more versed in this kind of stuff. And we all have the basic training. I never had any interest in being tech rescue stuff or the urban search and rescue, but we're hoping to drive some engagement with this and hear from you guys some pointers and some tips that we can either relay to other people or we can, elaborate on.
Yeah, and I think we've learned a lot too, even especially like post natural disasters, but also 9/11. I mean, think about just the taxing and how many just how long they dug at that location and the resources that were there. So
I think
Freddy, you were going to say something.
I think it's important for us to point out too is we're not looking to take this down any type of political road. What you feel either side is doing with these disasters. We want to talk about the fire response and the rescuer side of it, because frankly, the politics is getting old and tired, to be 100% honest with you.
I wasn't planning on it, but now that you said it.
Well, look at the time.
This is what I will say about it. It doesn't matter how much money is being given. The things that we want to talk about still have to happen.
Right.
It doesn't, like the money, the financial side of it is irrelevant and
sure
doesn't matter to what we have to do. To what first responders have to do, police, sheriffs, fire department, EMTs, paramedics, dispatchers, if they've even still got power. And I don't even know how they're dispatching now because a lot of those places still don't have power.
So I can tell you a little bit about that. And that's kind of what that was going to be my piece to this really, is that command level EOC activation. I've worked through several storms and how those resource requests come. And that was going to be kind of my piece, not the technical piece of this, because I think so many people want to respond. Like they're like, hey, I'll take leave from work and I will go because I see it on the internet and I know what has to happen. And that was going to be kind of my piece. But the way I want to lead it off of was kind of piggybacking what Freddy says, is saying just because it's on the internet does not mean that it's true either. And I think that that's the problem that we have. People will post something on social media, and because they're standing behind some tragedy behind them, we automatically assume that what they're saying is true because they're there, and that's not true. And I think that that's the frustrating part. And we talked a little bit off recording just about some of the stories of things that I'm hearing from our first responders that are deploying, and from other officers who have crews that are deploying. And it's very, very real. The severity of how long it is and how long of an incident is. I know Matt talked about wildfires and the demobilization. The reality of it is Western North Carolina, this is going to be months of deployments. I mean, we're talking months of it. Everything from the rescue phase of probably at least 30 days just for rescue and then transition into recovery, body recoveries, all the way to damage assessment to allow FEMA to come in and then start doing the actual true disaster assistance that people are so upset about right now, because that's what we're hearing is not always the case.
And it's going to differ. It's going to differ from first responder to first responder. To be 100% honest with you, I've heard stories of people who either volunteered to go down to a disaster, or were spun up because they're part of a task force, and some are out in, John boats with a Johnson 9.9, going house to house looking for survivors and stuff like that. And then I've also heard of people who get embedded with fire departments down there, where you have one or two people who work in that community. They embed people from other states onto that truck or that engine or that ladder company or whatever it is, just as manpower. And so now you're basically working out of a fire department in another state strictly as manpower. So it's going to vary person to person what your experiences are. We have a couple of instructors at the academy who are on Michigan Task Force 1, which is a huge network across the state of Michigan of people who are like high-level technical rescuers who like live for this stuff and they want to be a part of it. They just got back from Helene call out just a few days ago, to the point where we had our extrication instructor. He's a whiz. He does a great job. We were not sure if he was going to be back to teach extrication. He ended up being back, and now it sounds like he taught it Monday and Tuesday this week. It sounds like he might end up getting spun up at the end of this week. He's a retired chief from a neighboring department of ours, but he still is part of Rescue Task Force 1 because he enjoys it so much. So he takes the call outs, he does all that, and it sounds like he might get spun up again. So, it's awesome that there are people out there who will take these assignments, who will leave their families for, unknown amount of time.
Yeah, like Brian said, months.
And I tip my cap to Matt in this, because it's, in my opinion, it's a what do you call it, a cat of a different shade, if you will, or something like that. You get your fire call outs where it's like, hey, you're going, and it's 2 weeks, and too bad, so sad. So I give all of you credit. There's been a couple of opportunities where I have signed up on one of those, like, hey, if we need people, are you willing to go? And it was when the kids were younger or whatever. It would have lined up, didn't need it, and never ended up going. But I personally think that the people who are selfless like that and go down to these disaster areas and leave their own families to go and help these people in dire need, they're people that we should try and be more like, honestly, I think.
Hey, the Cool Fireman Podcast. We're looking for a bunch of cool firemen. That's all. You know what I mean? And like natural disasters like this is devastation. It's full devastating. Like we talked to, excuse me, we talked to Greg Rudiger about the trampoline. And this is literally the meteor that hits your fucking trampoline. Your trampoline's gone. Like their house is gone. I just saw a video on TikTok of this guy who's like recording the water breaking through a window and into their house, and then another guy's on a kayak in his. I
saw him yesterday. Yeah.
Did you see that? And he was in a kayak, and he's like, "Yeah, that's bubbles coming from my foundation because now there's water under my foundation. That's not a good thing."
Did you see the one of the people that came back after Helene and they opened their door and there's a crocodile in their house?
Yes. Oh my God. I saw that one today too. Yeah, it's crazy. But like with these people
that's your house,
firemen,
that's not my house,
and all these first responders that are part of these urban search and rescue teams, like they see mass devastation, devastation. People that have nothing left, crying, screaming, lost their family members, especially like a week, 2 weeks into it, it goes to body recovery. Like this is no more longer like a search. This is like body recovery. And you're going to go into these houses. Once the water levels come down, I got a frog in my throat. I went to the Padre game last night. So I'm a little coarse. So I apologize. Horse. Sorry.
Yes.
Horse.
Like a horse, of course.
Mr.
Ed, yeah. So these guys, they go into the houses, like the water comes down just, enough to where they can go and they can do body. Like body. Hey, today you're gonna go do body recovery. Like, that's insane to me. Like that sucks. Like that is crazy.
Yeah. Well, and let's talk about the totality of that. Well, let's go back. I want to go back to what Freddy said about how do you put your name on the list? What does that look like? Because there's the mental frustration I think that a lot of first responders are getting from. If you remember, was it last week's podcast or the week before? It was the week before when it was Doug, Matt, and I, and these guys knew it because my phone rang in the middle of the podcast. I had it on silent, and it was the state calling me from a group that I was on. And in that moment of silence, I said, "Hey, let's look out for Western North Carolina," because I was texting people at the state, and they're like, hey, we need to talk to you about a request. So they put me on notice and said, hey, can we get, and I'm not going to share what it is because it's not relevant, but it was, can you filter and see if you can get me 8 of these things? That's as specific as I'll get. And so I got on the phone that afternoon and I started making phone calls across the state trying to get 8 of these widgets, whatever they were. Now, if I would have called all 3 of you and said, hey, there's a request from the state. I need XYZ 1, 2, 3. I need for you to be able to go and do. You'd be like, yep, let me go talk to my chief. I'm going to see if I can do this, blah, 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 blah. Okay, guys, now this is preliminary. Nothing set in stone. And I called 8 of you. How many times do you think I got text messages back from those 8 or 10 people saying, what have you heard? Am I ready to go? When do you need me? Where do I need to be at? So there's that amped up already. It's that hurry up and wait. And I gave the disclaimer to every one of those 8 people that said, y'all, this is conceptual. This is a backup to the backup of a plan, right? And this is in one community, and you've got the whole part of the state too. So we're talking about, the totality of that, right? So like, I love the part of this where we talked about Matt's wildfire, where he was like, the perimeter's 300 plus miles long, right? So think about North Carolina specifically with Helene and how big this footprint is, and the USAR requests, they're just trying to figure this out, right? Like on the response piece of this. And so they don't have it. They just don't have the things that they need for these. They're running scenario double Z in their mind from a tactical perspective, trying to figure it out. And one of the things that I was going to mention was, so you get called like Freddy did and said, hey, put your name on this list, you may go. So then you hurry up and wait. And then the ask never comes, or the ask keep coming. Like, for example, my department is on its 3rd set of firefighters that have deployed out west. 3rd set, right? And what do? They get in a van, in a departmental van, and they swap. There's 2 vans. They meet halfway, they switch over, and that's what they do. And the engine has stayed out there, and all they do is swap out. They take their gear, whatever. I've heard stories today, I was telling before the podcast aired, and our guys are lucky. They're embedded in a VFD. They're help covering the district, because every one of the firefighters that are in that, I won't say everyone, the majority of the people in that fire district lost almost everything, and they needed to go home. They're in a fire district where they just can't respond. Yeah, it's decimated, and they need to be at home with their family, and that's where they're at. And so our firefighters are covering that. That is the same thing as what we're seeing in Asheville. All of our metro cities in North Carolina are covering the city of Asheville, because at least the mindset was back then is the majority of the firefighters in Asheville had lost almost everything. And so they needed to go home and take care of families and loved ones and aunts and uncles and everything else, because it was so decimated. And, when you start looking at that, it is a different type of impact than other natural disasters. And I say this as a fire marshal and a prevention guy. It's hard. We're right in the middle of Fire Prevention Week, right? And we say that 1 in 4 are impacted by fire, but natural disaster, wildfire, hurricane, look at the footprint that leaves. Like Hurricane Florence, you couldn't be in a room with 10 people and 4 of them didn't say, I lost everything I owned. Everything. Right? That was that proportionally was much greater than fire. And so I guess what I'm saying is those same firefighters who are deploying, who do answer the call and do go out west. I heard today we got crews of firefighters that are trying to just canvass, report back, because there's no communication. There's no ability to call 911 and say, hey, come get me. Here's where I am. I'm trapped. I have no water. I have no food. They can't even communicate that. There's no roads. So they're hiking into these areas, these very remote areas of mountainous area, and they're going and they leave their vehicle and it's miles up these mountains. So they take a backpack and they take their food and they sleep in a ditch. That's what they do. Similar to what Matt was talking about on his wildfire response, but the only difference is they're gone 3 to 4 days at a time. So they go up, they canvass an area, then they come back down after about 3 or 4 days. And that's just unreal to me, because for us, with our hurricanes on the coast, we go canvass an area because it's flat, right? Like we can We can go search it with a drone. We've got technology to our advantage. It's just different. And that's what blows my mind about this. Not only that, I think, and I'm not armchair quarterbacking when I say this, but I am questioning only because I don't know and I'm ignorant to it, is what is our response with our own military assets? I know the North Carolina National Guard is doing things, but I'm also wondering, where is our military presence in response? I know they've had Black Hawks and they've had some other stuff, but I am questioning that because I know for me, during Hurricane Florence, I had the ability in the Emergency Operations Center with high water vehicles, LMTVs, 5 tons. I put firefighters on them. They went into those communities. That's how they did it. And I want to know, not to question the actions, but to say, how are they using those military assets and to what level? You know what I mean? Because it's just a different way. And that's what the Cool Fireman Podcast does. It learns by doing, and that's how we become better. And that's what I'm curious to know. And I mean, we're so far from having that conversation about Helene right now. And literally as Milton's making landfall in Florida, but the way that they're going to deal with Milton in Florida is totally different than the way that they're dealing with Helene in the mountains. It's crazy.
Flat land, a lot of swamp. They're mostly flood water.
Yeah.
Like high water rather than fast moving water, I should say.
So I know
we be a lot of high water rather. I mean, I saw a map today of the detour you had to take, in the Western Carolina now, and how many counties, like how much of the state was like
cut off,
but they had it like shaded on the map, that this area is just, you can't get there.
Right.
And
just completely cut off.
But that's because of a lot of fast moving water coming down the mountain. But like you said, Florida's completely different scenario. They're going to just have a lot of high water that's eventually going to have to recede when the storm surge leaves. So completely different search tactics. And like you said, you can drones and, you walking in with waders in waist high water, whatever, like completely different set of tactical objectives, versus the mountains.
I loved the ingenuity that I saw online today. Now, you didn't have to say anything. You just saw the pictures. You saw where these tractor trailers had been destroyed, and the local folks, we'll call them rednecks because I love rednecks and what they can do. The hillbillies had gone and got those tractor trailers, put them in the stream, right? It's the beauty of it. It had the railroad, or it had the tires. It had some clearance so the water could get underneath it, and they made their own bridges.
Yep.
And they were making it. They were making systems.
Four rednecks with excavators did a whole lot of work to get roads open.
Yes. And that's what they need to be able to get people in and out. And we've talked about that before on the podcast, is we will have normal calls during adverse conditions of emergencies and natural disasters. And the question is, how do we plan for that? Right. And then, of course, and not to totally change the subject, but how does that USAR play into that? How do we do trench rescues? How do we do all these other types of things in these types of conditions? The pictures of the mud in Asheville right now from the mountain.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. That's the stark difference in these two storms, is the Western Carolina is so different because of the terrain, the mud, because of the mudslides and the mountains, the mountains and the rocks collapsing off of the mountain, versus what's happening in Florida. It's apples and oranges, and it's got to be, I don't want to say harder, but it's the complexity of what has to happen in the western part of North Carolina is tactically so far above the people out on horseback and muleback riding up into the mountain. Like, it's just resourcefulness.
If you had to say natural disaster USAR response, I think hurricane for me, because of where I am.
Yeah.
Matt, what would you guys say that your USAR is spun up most for USAR? With regards,
structural collapse or earthquake, right?
For earthquake, right? Like for localized structural collapse or hurricanes on the East Coast. Yeah.
Yeah. I got you. How about you, Doug?
Really asked me today. We were sitting somewhere waiting, and I opened my radar just to look at the storm down south, and I was like, "Look at this, really! Like, it's covering several states." She's like, "Have you ever had to deal with that?" I'm like, "Yeah, honey, I lived here all my life. Like, I've had several that impacted, around the Carolinas and coming east or west, rather, or on the Virginia Beach area coming west." I think Andrew was the biggest one I can remember where I was actually out working in it. But yeah, I said, honey, it's so eerie, the dark. And then when the sky gets like quiet, it's so deafening. It's hard to explain, man.
Yeah. How about you, Freddy?
It's hurricanes by far for me. Yeah.
How about you, Freddy? If you had to say natural disaster for USAR, what would it be?
Tornadoes are the blizzards that we can get here. We get pretty bad straight line winds and tornadoes. Obviously, nothing like what the hurricanes are going through, but there's enough damage and destruction, and for those, they come through. I mean, they come through like a lightning bolt, man. It's there and it's gone.
I guess to the same token, the blizzard can essentially shut your whole area down the same way that this does. I mean, everything. If you have 8 feet of snow and it's wind driven, I mean, you can't do anything.
Yeah, because then we got to start prioritizing who are we going to dig out. We've got to make sure that we can get main roads. Now you're worried about furnaces that get their exhaust gets covered up. So you got houses that are filling with CO. You've got elderly people who, their power goes out. Now they're freezing to death. They can't get their medication. People that are already bedbound, who depend on maybe aids. The aids can't get to them. So there's a lot of mobilizing that gets activated for that. But I think the number one would have to be tornadoes. We also get a good amount of rain here that causes flooding. A couple of times a summer, I feel like, and it's for whatever reason, it's so stupid, but there's super deep waters like under viaducts or in streets where the storm sewer system gets overrun and people drive through it and then they get their cars stuck. And then it's like, just this past summer we had I think it was about 22 inches of water on a few streets in the city that I live in, and we had some less than intelligent drivers just drive right into it, completely disable their car, and now I'm wading out there in my bunkers, either scraping storm things because it's got leaves, sticks, all that jazz, trying to find it, or B, throwing somebody over my shoulder, or if they are capable enough, I'm saying, get out. I'm gonna get all wet. Yeah, you are.
Yeah, you are. You shouldn't have went in there.
What about my car? Well, when the water recedes, we'll have a tow company come get it, and we'll figure it out.
Don't drown.
Yeah.
Hope you got insurance.
No doubt. So maybe that's our call to action, is in addition to having somebody who may know USAR, and a good way to end it is what's the natural disaster that your agency prepares for, if it's something that we didn't say, or what level do you guys prepare for, because I know we have a USAR team, but we're not like staged to that level to where we deploy for USAR. We just do our own thing. And I think that would be something good to know, is what's your plan for USAR? Some agencies rely on state resources. Some people have their own. And I think that would be a good thing for people to chime into in the comments and let us know.
Yeah.
How are you guys prepared for USAR?
You, person listening or person watching this.
Yeah.
What role do you play on your tech team? Is it something that you volunteered for? Is it something that you were voluntold and fell in love with it? And what are some things that we missed, I guess, that the tech team does for these call-outs?
I mean, we could get crazy. I mean, there's tactics. There's. I mean, these people that are going on are highly trained. Like the urban search and rescue teams. They're highly trained. They have dogs that like sniff like people. I mean, it's crazy. Like with the things that they can do. But like when it comes to like shoring up buildings and
for
making sure that places are safe, and like what Freddy was saying, making sure that main roads are open. So it's there's a lot that goes into it, and I would imagine that a lot of it is just like a wildland fire. It's IMT, it's incident management team, and
Mm-hmm.
They've got different branches, different divisions. And they're trying to figure out, the priorities. Like obviously life is number one, but after a certain amount of time it becomes, it's a body recovery at that point. But and then trying to get these people back to normal living. These people that don't have homes, so it's crazy. The mass devastation. I mean, it's pretty similar to a wildland fire, but probably even worse. I mean, regionally. I mean, I would imagine that a hurricane, when you got water levels up 10, 12 feet, whatever it is, and it just devastates an entire town. But I mean, I guess a wildland fire can be pretty similar.
Not to mention the economical impact on a community. Yeah, everybody in the community may have lost their homes or damage to their homes, but how many businesses in that town now are devastated? And so
and won't recover.
Yeah. Right. So now the water's receded. We've picked up the trees. We've cleaned up the debris. All right. Now I need to go restock my refrigerator. The local Kroger or Food Lion or Piggly Wiggly or whatever anybody shops at,
whatever it
is now devastated, and I have to drive like everybody else in the community 35 minutes just to find a grocery store that has anything.
But now it's probably an hour 35 because that road is jacked up and you got to go around you're right.
Or it has so many people
right
going to it.
Gas. There's nothing there. There's gas shortage. Like everything's absolutely.
I heard where a big home improvement store, to talk about the totality of storms, of this storm, had water, and all you could see was the top of the air handler units.
Yeah.
That's it. That's a lot of water.
Yeah.
Okay. When you think about
everybody can imagine a home improvement store, how tall that building is.
Yes. Yeah. And you're talking, think about aerial operations. If you wanted to spot your ladder, right, to get up there and work on that, that's all something that we've tactically trained for because it's a low frequency, high that's for another debate, but a high probability incident. It could be high risk, low risk, depending on how it's set up. But we've all ran that scenario in our head. And so when you go in your brain, you think, God, there's probably 40 or 50 feet, right, to get to that point. And so in those valleys, that's how much volume we're talking about, it coming down into this valley, filling all of that up. That's just unreal.
And water
that's care. Unreal.
Water don't care.
Yeah, and that same person that I talked to was deploying to go up there to fill and work in some of those stores, and over 50% of the employees that worked in that store had yet to be accounted for. Meaning, like, they hadn't checked in to say, hey, can you go work somewhere else? They couldn't reach them, whatever. I'm not saying they died in that store. I'm just saying, like, they just couldn't reach them. Their bosses were trying to say, hey, can you go work somewhere? Couldn't. No one could do anything. Like, how do you reset? How do you reset of any of that? It's unreal. I know we need to wrap up, but I would just say continue to pray for Western North Carolina, pray for Southeastern the United States, Florida, everyone that's impacted by these natural disasters. California and their wildfires, it's a crazy season that we're living in right now. And more importantly, the first responders that are seeing these things. And these are things that when they close their eyes, they're just reliving it over and over and over again. And that's not something, and they willingly go, right? They're like, yep, I'll go do it.
Because that's what we do. There's a problem.
I was going to say, that's what we do.
Problem, and we need to help the solution.
Got to fix it.
Yeah.
We got to help fix it.
Yep. Well, before we close up, we'd be remiss if we didn't do a moment of silence. First, we've lost several first responders through this thing already, and we're probably going to lose more, in addition to the, who knows, hundreds of people, of citizens who have died. So we'd be very remiss if we didn't give them a moment of silence tonight, boys.
Amen.
Thank y'all for that.
And
I think we'll wrap it up with our last couple of posts have driven a lot of engagement, and I'm going to personally start responding on TikTok. I'll start responding with some comments to some things. And the retention versus hiring debate was a big one. We'll touch back on that. We'll circle back, and we'll actually cover that in the podcast, I think, one day coming up.
Yeah.
Or 1 week coming up, one episode coming up. But yeah, I'm going to start responding to some of those with videos, not just comments. I know Matt and I have been kind of going crazy with trying to respond to comments. I think we're both going to try to get some video responses back just to kind of get some personal engagement. So thank y'all for engaging and driving the post. And we love questions. We love respectful debates. We're not always going to agree, but I think it just makes the service better. So keep them coming. Thank y'all. Brian, hope you feel better. Freddie, hope everybody in your house gets better.
Hey, shout out to our sponsors.
And our sponsors. Big shout out to Unky and the Burn Box. Unky, as always, just clutch, man. I asked him the other day about some new stuff coming out, so be on the lookout for that. And Burn Box just dropped, for October, and we've got we got a sticker in the box, and we've got a QR code on the back now that links to the podcast. So big shout out to Tom for everything he's doing for us. We appreciate him. You guys go support him and Unky both. They're supporting us. You guys support us. Oh, and let me end this with a real big shout out.
Well, I will say that we're on the podcast, but you guys that are watching these clips, that are listening to the podcast, that are interacting with our posts, you guys are the best part of this podcast by far. Otherwise, it's just 4 or 5 of us talking to ourselves, basically. So we appreciate the engagement. We appreciate you guys throwing ideas out and humoring this silly idea that we had a couple of years ago to
if your department won't let you talk about it, if you have a question that maybe you don't want to ask in front of people, you can absolutely do it, low key to us. But I want to give a huge shout out. We got a DM from a guy named Wes Masters up in Alaska. Buddy his was listening to the pod or something, and he reached out to me and he was like, "Hey man, can I send you guys a donation?" I was like, I mean, yeah, but you don't need to do that, dude. He was like, "Man, I want to. I really dig what you guys are doing. Use it to help drive posts. What do you call it?
Targeted ads,
not sponsored. Like
boosting and stuff.
Yeah, boosting. Yeah. He said, "Man, my buddy told me to check you guys out. I sent him to you guys. I'm really supportive of what you guys are doing. I dig it, man. We all dig it up here in Alaska. Keep it up." So he sent us a very sizable donation, and we certainly appreciate him for that. And I just want him to know that it is not falling on deaf ears or anything. We want people to know who you are for supporting us, and we're gonna put it to good use, partner. Thank you, Wes. We appreciate you.
Oh yeah,
hell yeah,
hell yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Hey,
all right, and roll it, GG.
Hey. Roll it, GG.
Before you leave, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and give these firemen a huge thumbs up. Also, make sure you check out thecoolfireman.com for more. Thanks!